Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving up some time this evening to come along and listen to our panel members talk. My name is Rob Wilson, and I'm the lead for the Open Business Creators program here at the Open University. This is the third of our webinar series, this one focused on making connections and increasing visibility. We want you to kind of listen to the speakers share their entrepreneurial journey and some insights that they have on challenges that people face starting businesses in the UK at the moment, and then also their advice for people starting out and looking to find the right support networks for them. You're welcome to put your questions in the chat, and then towards the end, we'll open up the floor for people to also put their hands up, turn their microphones on, and ask a question of the presenters. We do have one presenter who couldn't join us tonight, Justice Williams, but we still have Russell, Claudine, and Sonia here to speak. And I'll hand over now to Russell, one of our entrepreneurs in residence here at the Open University, to kick off the conversation. Go ahead, Russell.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start if we could ask the speakers to introduce themselves. So, Sonia, would you like to start and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. On the kind of subject matter of making connections and being visible, I've been in touch with the university for several years now and different members of the cohort. So it was brilliant that through those connections and through those conversations that they were able to approach me this year and say, look, we'd love for you to come on and really share your story. And I think that's just a testament to the connections sometimes work over time and it's not an overnight success. But in terms of introduction, my name is Sonia Barlow. For context, I graduated in 2015 and fell into the world of technology, very much taking the first jobs that came my way. I worked my way up before starting a brunch club in 2018, 2019 called the Like-Minded Females Network. My claim to fame is that I was let go from work twice, and so instead of making it 3 out of 3, I thought, you know what, there's a problem. The problem is that companies want to keep these really ambitious and diverse talent, but they necessarily don't have the policies or the relevant people in place. And so how do I solve that from a solution standpoint? So I started a consultancy in 2020. We, in the last 5 years, have worked with over 100 client partners from Barclays to Vodafone to Santander to Babbel to Resident Advisor, and use our profits, we'll reinvest our profits into a not-for-profit. So we run a careers and mentorship program. We've upskilled 100,000 people across 24 countries with a 90% success rate. I'm also a author of a book, so Unprepared to Entrepreneur. I got that during the pandemic, again, through connections and being visible. I had my own BBC radio show for 3 years and it became award-winning. And when I felt like I was no longer learning, and learning is a real driving factor for me, I stepped down and thought, you know what do people do when they stop learning? They start YouTube. So I've dabbled in YouTube, I've dabbled in social media. I'm now writing my second book, which is ironically all about making connections, especially in the world of AI and technology. And so my top tips here will very much be around how do you not just create those connections, but how do you sustain those connections, especially if you might be neurodivergent or if you might be othered or if you might be uncomfortable in situations, how to not be a noisy networker. And most importantly, when we're thinking about being visible, it's about adding value and not just going viral, which are two very different things that we can definitely touch base on. And outside of that, I'm also here to listen and learn. So please get involved in the chat and ask questions. And I know that my panelists will have so much more to add. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. An amazing achievement in such a short period of time. Claudine.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Russell, and thank you to the Open University for inviting me to join this panel. It's always I think it's always great to be able to share a story of what I can only view as social transformation. So I've been a social entrepreneur. I came fresh out of university and was working in an organization that was had significant values. We shared the same values, and I stayed, worked my way up within that organization, ended up marrying the boss. and, and that was kind of my introduction, if you like, into the social enterprise world. But one of the things that I'm really proud of in that space of time, over the last 3 decades of my career, is creating over 10,000 jobs in the social enterprise and health space. And what that really done was contribute to social mobility, and similar to what Sonia was talking about, in terms of upskilling my staff, having people come to an organization looking for a job role, not having the qualifications, but being able to create a pathway for them to actually get into or enter into the world of work. And nothing gave me more joy than seeing somebody who came with no qualifications and now they're leaving because they're going to be an investment banker. Like, whoa, what happened in the space of 8 to 10 years that you were here? And that's been absolutely amazing. So for 3 decades, I spent a significant amount of time in that particular space. I now am a consultant and advisor, so I consult for Lloyds Banking Group. I chair their Black Business Advisory Committee, and I also am the European regional lead for the Atlanta Black Chamber. And both of those roles really kind of helped me to lean into what I've been doing for the last 30 years. Again, leaning into the topic of tonight's discussion around connections and around visibility, and what that cycle looks like. You speak to somebody once, and then you continue to maintain that type of conversation because you just don't know what it's going to end up doing. And so for 30 years, I've been telling stories about business, and for 30 years, I've been sharing my experience, and it has culminated into these types of opportunities. It's culminated into job creation, social mobility, and community transformation.
Wow, thank you so much now. And just to introduce myself, so I'm an entrepreneur in residence with the Open University, and my role there is to help to link the university with the business world, particularly with individuals who are looking to start their own business. So for many people who take a start at the Open University, perhaps in mid-career or even earlier, they have an ambition to be their own boss, an ambition to change the world in a way that will make it better. And that's where I exist. I like to think of myself as a community builder, community being the concept of a village. And then the people in a village all have something in common, which is geographical, whereas I tend to do this on a global scale where I bring together people with a common interest. And I suppose my claim to fame is that I've built Scotland's largest global business community with about 20,000 people across 72 countries. And those individuals are linked by a common interest in their vision of a nation, and the nation being Scotland. And a lot of it we've discovered is about family. And it's those family values about wanting to help and support each other that actually triggers everything off. I recently wrote a book which actually helps people to take advantage of that, called The Ask. And it's all about the fact that we want to help every young entrepreneurial business, whether it's run by someone who's 18 or someone who's 70. We want to help, but you have to allow us to help. And by opening your door, by having an ask and telling us how we can assist, that's how we get everything started. So I've been asked to chair this evening's discussion with the hope that we can illuminate some ideas that will help you as you grow your business. So Robert, you said that the first question I should perhaps start with is about the challenges. Is that correct?
That's right. So thinking about the challenges that women face in the UK starting a business. Part of the whole reason for us launching a fund for women pointed to some stats in the Rose Review that looked at if female-founded businesses received investment at the same rate as men, that would add a large amount to the UK economy. So why aren't women-founded businesses receiving investment at that same rate? What are the challenges out there?
Well, there is your challenge, Claudine and Sonia. Who would like to come in first to discuss this, taking it from the point of view of challenges?
I'm happy to kick off,
Thank you.
Russell. I think it's a really hot topic at the moment. And Robert, you mentioned the Rose Review, and I think there are a number of factors, and I'm very keen and very aware that there is not a one size fits all approach. But to those who are thinking about what those challenges look like, they come in the form of access to finance. So part of the reason why that's a challenge for women is because they are disproportionately less invested, and there are fewer women who are applying for access to finance, fewer women applying for overdrafts. So by default, if they can't access the finance that's required to help start, build or develop their organizations, they're at a disadvantage. There's also issues around gender bias and stereotypes. So women often speak about sexism in business, they're not assertive enough, and those come and present a different set of challenges. I think there's also another issue around work-life balance and care responsibilities, and just by default, women are known or seen or viewed in most households as the caregivers, and we are looking now at the sandwich generation. They're either looking after children or older relatives, so they're right in the middle of that kind of care situation, and having to choose between starting a business, caring for older relatives, or caring for young children. I think there's probably the main one that I've come across in the women who I mentor in business is mainly around confidence and imposter syndrome. And that lack of confidence and imposter syndrome leads to risk aversion and a reluctance to ask. So if you already lack confidence and you're already experiencing imposter syndrome, you're going to feel like, I'm not going to put myself forward. I'm just not going to ask because they're going to say no anyway. And I think the last thing that I've personally experienced is just the lack of networks and access to role models. And I don't mean, what I mean by that is access to networks and role models potentially in the angel investment space. So what I've experienced in community is that you'll tend to support people who know and look like you. If there are not very many women in that space, then by default, they can't access the angel investment. They can't access the senior leaders. They don't have the role models who they can point to in order to help them along that pathway. And those are some of the challenges that either I've experienced personally or in my role as a mentor supporting other women in business that they have shared with me.
Claudine, can I thank you for that? You've laid out the challenges very clearly. And without wanting to put you on the spot, if someone's watching this today or watching a recording and they identify with those challenges that you've mentioned, particularly things like imposter syndrome or a belief that when you ask it'll be declined, what's your advice to them? What should they do as a first step?
I think we kind of spoke about this in the introduction around building community.
Yep.
Sometimes you've got to be in a community or in a space with other people who can help you to take your thinking up another level, or who can help you to see from a very different perspectives. So access to networks, access to role models is a really good place to start. And what I've experienced is, there's a saying that I heard that says courage and cowardice are contagious. Courage and cowardice are contagious.
Yeah.
So whichever one you lean into, if you lean into somebody else's courage, you'll get some the remnants of their courage. If you lean into cowardice, you're going to get the remnants of somebody else's cowardice. So I wonder if, for those people who are listening might be thinking, hey, she's talking to me about now, I would recommend that you try and plug into networks, try and plug into community spaces where people are doing things that you would like to do, and see how you can learn from them. That kind of gives you the impetus to say, look, if she can, I can. And I think the beauty of sessions like tonight is you'll hear Sonia's story, you'll hear my story, you'll hear from Russell, you'll hear from Robert, and you're picking up things. And really what you're learning is that we're just normal people. We are just normal people who've decided to step up and step out of a situation or out of a circumstance and put ourselves to the test. We've just decided to bet on ourselves in order to make that happen. And that really kind of speaks to the confidence piece and the imposter syndrome piece.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Those such powerful words. And Sonia, how do you see that the challenge that's faced by, in this case, women starting businesses?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And thank you, Claudine, for really going through all the challenges. So I'm going to echo what Claudine said, but also try not to repeat myself, because she laid them out so well. If I take it back, when I started a business, and the stats tell us that most women start businesses from a place of sacrifice or because something has happened, not because they woke up one day and they're like, we're going to leave our full-time salary to start a business that will not get us funding and might not make us enough money and is going to put a lot of pressure on us. You know, like very few people wake up and think, I'm going to risk it all for an even bigger risk. And that's because something has happened. For me, it was losing my job. And so it wasn't, oh, I've lost my job. It was, I need to now go and take control of my finances and my career and my future self, because I can't depend on the system and structure because it's not very much made for someone like myself. That might be because I'm a woman. It might be because I'm a woman and I'm South Asian. It might be because I'm a woman and South Asian and I'm neurodivergent. Like, there's so many other factors at play there, right? But I think going back to your question in terms of challenges, there's a lack of networks, which are very obvious. 80% of your opportunities come through those that you know or that know of you. So how do you gain those opportunities when you're not even invited to the room? And I have to say that in that case, men more than women at the beginning have been my biggest advocates. They have opened doors for me, not to say, hey, we're going to speak on your behalf, but it's very much going and presenting the work and evidence and saying, here is what I've done. Here is how you can be a sponsor, an ally, an advocate for me. Get me into that room, because if I can get into that room and I can pitch and I can present and I can win something over, then I can be that change maker. A lot of the time, we're also waiting to the lack of role models or people that represent us. I think the problem is that we're waiting for someone to come as a sparking light. I've decided that I'm going to be that change maker. And so it might be more uncomfortable for myself. That is me being confident in, I need to take that stepping stone so that it's easier for that next generation, especially when you come from a low social income background or you want change to be created. And the third is not putting yourself forward is a real challenge. I always say that even if you self-nominate or even if you put yourself forward for an award or an interview, even if you don't get it, that's okay. Because one, you have learned more about yourself and how to present yourself. But two, and most importantly, going back to the network piece, they will keep you on file. You will be invited. The amount of rooms that I've gotten myself into after I've nominated and I've absolutely not even made the cut is astonishing. But then you can mingle and you can network and you can learn the phrases and you can very much be a part of that crowd. Now, look, networking is, it causes a lot of nerves. And as somebody who is very good at networking, that's because I was very bad at networking. I was noisy and I thought that you had to tell everyone everything. And that's also a challenge, is thinking that you've got a minute and everyone needs to know everything in that minute. Otherwise, you're going to lose that minute. And I think women feel that way also because we have been given such few chances and we feel like we need to tell everything in that moment, but actually you need your work to really speak for you. So it could be that you're going into the room, and it's something I created a few years ago using the 3-2-1 rule. So you talk to 3 people, you connect with 2, and you follow up with 1. What women are generally good at is we're good at keeping those one-to-one relationships. We're good at checking in. We're good, keeping up with the trends and understanding what's happening in the world because we're naturally curious. Then you go and you check in with that one person, be that on a LinkedIn or be that in a workshop like this or be that in person, and say, let's just see what you've got and how can I help solve your problem, because we're great problem solvers, and here is a problem of mine that I can need your help with. So yes, there's a lack of network, there's the lack of knowledge, there's the lack of putting yourself forward in those rooms, But also there's the lack of, you know what, it's not that I'm going to ask and I'm going to take from you first. Let's help solve your problem because that's something I'm naturally good at. And then I'm going to actually let you know how you can help me. And that help doesn't have to be big or broad. It can be as small as, you are connected to this one person. Do you mind giving me an introduction? And what's the worst that can happen? No, that's okay. Doesn't matter. I'll go to the next one. But I promise you, more times than not, people want to help. But because we are so busy in life and we have short attention spans, people just need you to be really specific with the ask. And I think that's also just an overall challenge, is when you're filling out documents or funding rounds or grants, or you're asking for favors, or you're providing favors, or you're connecting with people, be very specific in what you want and always go with a solution, because it'd be very hard for someone to say no to that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if I could perhaps add something from my own experience, our world today is filled with experienced business professionals who wish to help you as you start your business. But you need to reach out to them and request that assistance. There's never been an easier time to find those individuals because they're all on LinkedIn. Remember, I'm of an age where I didn't have LinkedIn when I started my career. We had a thing called a bus, which I used to go to the library to list the companies, and then the telephone directory to find the numbers, to then phone the person at reception to try and find the job title of the person I should talk to. So it's a very different world. But in the UK today, we have a generation of people aged between 50 and 75 who have had successful careers. They're that baby boomer generation. They've built successful careers. They have fantastic networks. They have fantastic knowledge. And now they're out of the business world. But they would still like to be involved in some way. And they would love to hear from you. And I do a matching service when someone contacts me and says, I'm looking for help. And the way to get that help is just to reach out to someone and not oversell or anything. But if you were to write to me, for example, and say, hey, Russell, I saw you on that great Open University event. I'm starting a business, and I would like to ask your thoughts on what I'm doing. I just need 5 minutes of your time on a call. I will say yes. Most normal human beings will say yes. But if you make it difficult for me, for example, if you write to me and say, here's a 2-page document that I want you to read about my business, I'd then like to meet you in town, Russell, and buy you a coffee, and we can have an hour-long discussion about it. I'm going to say no, because I don't know if I can help you. I don't even know if we'll get on. So just make it really easy. So use people like me and say, hey, can you help me? This is what I'm trying to do. Something else on fundraising. So the vast majority of businesses in our world today never raise funds. They simply solve a problem, and by solving that problem, they generate capital, which allows them to build their business. A brilliant example of that is I was speaking to someone who trims hedges. So they cut hedges round about gardens. And they've got a brilliant business. They've got a great reputation. They get referral business to go on to the next person. But initially, they launched that business by walking round a number of big houses, knocking on the door and saying, hey, I'm a young person. I'm starting this business. I would like to cut your hedge. And eventually someone said yes, and they built their business like that. But there's something about being an entrepreneur where you have to be brave. You have to just pull yourself together and go, I want to make this work more than anything else. So I'm going to take that risk and push myself forward. And that's where the fun is as well. Our business world today sometimes seems to be very serious. It's a game. It's about having fun, about having enjoyment. And most importantly, it's about helping others. So Robert, the second thing you wanted us to get onto was looking at advice and techniques and hints and tips for this subject that's now described as networking. So who would like to come in? Perhaps Sonia, would you like to come in first to give us your hints and tips about networking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to plug myself slightly and say that I have literally started on social media, especially TikTok, and YouTube, debunking networking myths and a whole networking series, because believe it or not, that is the basis of my next book. So it's going to be super exciting. But my top tips, let me simplify it, because I know Claudine's going to have so much more to add. The first thing is that we think this network that we're looking for is like this big shiny object that's really away from us. Your network start with the people around you, your teachers, your lecturers, you know, your dinner ladies, the people that serve you coffee, your friends, your family. So there have been moments in time where I have actually got back in touch with my teachers to say, this is how I would like some help. Can I come back to the school and give some time in return for X, Y, or Z? The people that you used to work with or are currently working with, hey, I'm thinking of starting this side hustle. Do you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes of your time just to give me some feedback on this color, on this logo, on this branding? And in return, when that time comes for you, I'd love to do the same. All the way to when you are traveling and have an explorer's mindset. So the ones that you meet at coffee shops, especially when you're thinking about where to eat. I don't really want to go on TripAdvisor or Google. Where do you recommend I go? And then you keep in touch with them and you connect with them. And sometimes they become the part of that larger network. The second thing, and it's to debunk it, is that according to the Harvard Business Review, we think that networkers have to have the gift of the gab. As somebody who has the gift of the gab, I'm going to tell you it's not true. Sometimes that works to our detriment, and I can talk more about that for days. But the best networking is done when, according to the research, you're talking 30% of the time, listening 70%. And if you are doing one-to-one, or you're slightly more introverted, or you are comfortable in situations, you know what? One-to-one networks are the ones that are going to create that fundamental change. And the third thing, and this is really important, that again, we kind of tend to overlook, is that sometimes, and again, there's research to back this, you can go on my socials to see, the best networks are actually not your closest friends. They're either your friends of your friends or people that you came into contact with. Why? Because there is an innate feeling of, I don't want to ask for this favor. I feel ashamed. I don't want to be judged. They're going to know what I'm doing. Or what if they say no? So go to someone next to your network, right? So that could be your best friend's friend. That could be somebody that you met working relationships in business that you're connected to, be that online or offline. Be very specific. I think you made such a great point, Russell. Super specific is the way forward. People have short attention spans. Individuals are busy in their own lives, but if it can be really, really intense, it will make a massive difference. Sometimes your network isn't even people you're connected to in real life. So when I did my second TED Talk, it's called Failure Comes Before Resilience. Could have absolutely changed the name, would have loved it if my network would have given me that information, but that's not why I asked. I said, hey, network, the internet. I am doing this TED Talk, and I've recorded myself for 15 minutes. I would love for someone just to listen to it and give me feedback. And I had 20 absolute random strangers come back to me saying, we would happily do that. It was so insightful. One, without realizing, my first audio was very gender-based, which I couldn't help because I think I was all about like women empowerment at that point, but actually it wasn't inclusive. And the second was that I was speaking to a larger cultural crowd, but I was using a lot of innate British or kind of London-based grammar and slang, so not everybody can understand. So your network could be individuals that you've connected to, but if you're specific with the ask, and in return, maybe you're asking for a testimonial, or you're returning with feedback, or you're giving them a review, there's also always a skill swap element. So, just in summary, your network is someone you are connected to, but your connection could be someone close by. So it could be someone from your past, like your teacher, your lecturer, someone you used to work with. Two, the friend of your best friend is probably going to be a better door opener than your best friend themselves. And there's research to kind of, back that up. And the third is that the best piece of networking is done when you are able to listen and really incorporate that one-to-one connection with a clear problem-solving element versus just trying to talk and get the most words in the room, because that's not what people are going to remember. And especially in this day and age where everybody is trying to be everything, controversially, I would very much say that your people remember you for your authenticity and the value add, not for the virality. They're not looking for someone who's successful overnight. They're looking for someone who has struggled over time, so they have the truth in what they're saying.
Yeah, I love that. The building the hero's journey is a great piece there. But I love that, Sonia, about the friend of your friend. And I think that's so true. And it's all about you have to be visible as well. And I'll maybe come on to that. And what about yourself, Claudine? What are your good tips for networking? How can we make this horrible thing work for us?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting observation in that relationship, in my experience, is the currency of business. So as we are navigating life, we're growing businesses, we're, we are entrepreneurs. So some of you on the line may be actually working in an organization, in a corporation, but you have the freedom to be entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial in your approach. I think the underlying factor that we can never forget is that relationships are the currency of business. And when I think back to some of my most challenging times in running a business, oh my goodness, we've got this major situation. Don't know how we're going to get through this. Oh my goodness, right, that's it. We're finished. The one thing that has saved me all the time is my phone book. I can look in my mobile phone and say, right, it's almost like that game, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You kind of know there is going to be a question, that there is a particular friend or a particular person who is in your phone book that you need to be able to ask a specific question. And don't ask them anything else, but they will know the answer to this particular question. And I think the reason why this is important is because we're in a space where it's really quite easy to cut people. Oh, I don't want to be friends with this person. Oh, I don't like this person, or this person, they have bad energy, is what I hear sometimes people say. But if relationship is the currency of business, then the first thing I'd say is be a friend. Just be a friend. And when you think about friendships, there are some friends that you don't actually speak to every single day. There's a friend that I have, we probably speak once a year. And every time we speak, it's almost like we've been speaking every day. You can just pick up and carry on that conversation right where you left off. And I think what that taught me is the second point that I want you to think about, is to be interested. It's kind of what Sonia said. Be interested in other people. This isn't a word salad. You don't have to get, 1,500 words to the minute, but be interested in other people, because there is going to come a time in that journey, whether you are an entrepreneur or you're working in your business, where you're going to need to, oh my gosh, Russell said something really great. Let me just see if I can log on or jump on and ask him a quick question over on LinkedIn. And it's that type of thing that over the last 3 decades, that when I think about my business experience, it's been because I've got people in my phone book or in my email list that I can go to ask a question, that I can go to help signpost me in the right direction. And when I think about that sales cycle, I've had probably in one occasion a 15-year sales cycle, nurturing a relationship with somebody for a significant period of time. And it wasn't until the 15th year that they came back to me and said, oh, Claudine, you're a consultant, aren't you? Right, I've got a pot of money and I need you to do such and such and such. And here's how much. I'm like, what? I've known you for 15 years. You've known that I could do this. And on the 15th, imagine if I had said, nah, I don't like this person. No, they don't talk to me. Oh, it's a man and he doesn't speak to me in the right way. Well, so I think 3 key things I'd love for you to remember. Relationship to the currency of business, be a friend, and be interested, because you just never know when that cycle is going to come back to support you, especially in a challenging situation.
I love be interested, because I discovered when my life changed about 25 years ago. And as I slowly spent time working on myself, I discovered that I had a raging ego, and that was one of my key problems. And I discovered that the way to manage that was to become interested in other people and to focus on how I could help them. And that single thing transformed my life. And I keep on taking it back. I sit on this call and I see my face there, and and the ego goes, oh, you're amazing to be on a panel with people who are so successful. But what I'm really here to do is to help the other people on the call. And it's my absolute passion is to help. There's something else I would add as well, which is in our world today, we have to be memorable. I don't mean famous. I can't think that anybody would want to be famous, but to be memorable. So if someone has come across me, they will automatically think, well, Russell knows about entrepreneurship, knows about Scotland, and I'm not going to forget him because he's 6'5" tall. And that's my memorable. And it sounds silly, but unless you're memorable, you will lose business opportunities. Because somewhere down the line, just as Claudine said there, and sometimes a piece of business takes 15 years to happen. And unless you're memorable, you can miss opportunities because someone in a couple of years' time can go, who was on that call I watched? Oh, she was really good. Remember she had the hat on and I was going, what was her name? And unless we can actually tag the memorable and the name, we can't find the person to buy from them. And there's one final thing I would say, and it's to everybody listening at the moment. You are incredibly interesting. You sometimes don't believe you are, but we each as individual human beings have had incredible experiences, which we share with perhaps family and friends, but those experiences can help to define us and help to differentiate us in a business world. I've got a friend who's a coach, a business coach. There must be 1 million business coaches in Britain today. But I sat down with her and I heard her life story. And she said one thing that I said, that's the transformational piece. She spent the first 4 years of her life working in A&E in a hospital. So you immediately go, this person's seen the worst of human beings. This person can handle anything. And it's a differentiator. And all of you listening, you've all had those experiences. And you've got to, without sharing confidences from your personal life, you've got to tell us about that hero's journey, that moment that made you think, I'm going to start a business because of this reason. Because no one starts a business as a way to make money. Because it's an incredibly difficult way to make money by starting a business. They start it because they've got an itch, they've got a passion, they've got a desire to solve a problem. And that's why we start businesses. So Robert, those were the two key areas you wanted us to cover. What would you like to see if is there any questions come in from our audience?
No direct questions that haven't really been addressed in the chat, and you guys have all said some fantastic stuff, exactly what I wanted to hear. If I could add something from my own perspective too, and so it's something that Shaitali, who I work very closely with, does really well, is something that you've touched on, but I call it relating to the person and not the position. Sometimes we're speaking to some really high up people in companies or government, but they're just normal people, and we can talk to them just directly and in a very friendly way, and we relate to that person and not their position. I think that's a great way to relationship build, and Shaitali does that very well, and she also does leaving a door open very well too. So things move pretty slowly sometimes at the OU, and so Shaitali will say, "We might go quiet for a while, but we'll be back." So it's kind of reminding that person that we are thinking about them and that we'll be back in touch.
Thanks, Robert, for that. So you've triggered a thought in Sonia's mind. Sonia, would you like to come in?
Yeah, this is a really interesting point, and Shaitali actually did that to me. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I have been here and there with the university for a few years now, actually staying in touch. So it was lovely that they kept the door open. So when they found a spot, they kind of got in touch. I have actually, there's a great question here about how do you get over social anxiety and introduce yourself to potential new business relationships. And if we were to look at the wider view around how do you ask questions, one, if you don't have anything to ask, you can go into a semicircle or a conversation like this and say something along the lines of, I'm just here to listen and learn. Should I have anything, I'll jump into the conversation. Otherwise, I'll stay connected. Two is if someone's made a really great point, you can say, that's a really great point you've made. I'm going to go do other research around it. Do you mind if we connect? I can follow up with my thoughts or a question. And the third is if you want a great opener, ask dopamine questions. Make people feel warm and uncomfortable without thinking about work. So one might be something like, when's the last time you traveled that inspired you? Or what's a book that you'd recommend? Or a controversial one, what is a TV show that you think is overrated? And if you can get people to break down those kind of more emotional barriers and stay warm, it's going back to what Claudine said, you're creating human connections, especially in the world of tech. You want to make sure that you're not chat GPTing your introductions and your conversations. People want to know the authentic you. And I would just end by saying that sometimes it's not going to work. And sometimes no one's going to care. And sometimes you're not going to get the response that you're after, be that during the conversation or afterwards. And that's completely fine, as long as you're doing it for you. A lot of the time, the social anxiety we're overcoming, or the imposter syndrome, or the lack of confidence, it has to start with, what are your internal thinking systems that you are creating to make sure that your goal or your metric when it comes to networking is not just to get that check, but it's, today I'm going to show up. Tomorrow I'm going to ask a question. The next day I'm going to follow up. The next day I'm going to do this. And then if you start creating those mini habits and you really become more confident in every single step, there's psychologists and sociologists that say that those mini habits and loops that you're creating will make it more natural for you, not just to network and start the conversations, but also, and most importantly, to know when to end the conversation, how to end the conversation. Because you can get into a loop where you're just talking for the sake of talking, but having conversation enders like, that's a great point you've made, I've got to run off now, but here I'm going to stay connected, all the way to, I probably am not the best person for this panel, but thank you for reaching out. How about I introduce you to somebody in my network that I think would be a great fit? Is a really nice way to pass the opportunity and also make yourself memorable.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Sonia. And Robert, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. I just wanted to bring some attention to the chat. People have started to introduce themselves, which is brilliant. So yeah, please do that. Share contact details if you want to, and give us feedback on other things that OU can be doing to help you network. But I also wanted to draw attention to Joanna's question here. She said, I have a question or observation which I certainly struggle with, and I believe this might be common for women. Clarity about what we can create, especially in the context of gaining this clarity when you have family responsibility and often financial dependency or abuse from a partner or no partner. Did any of the panelists have thoughts on this?
I'm not sure. Claudine, you wanted to come in. Was it on that subject or something?
It wasn't on this particular subject, but I'm happy to contribute, because I think it's a really important piece. The point that I was going to make was, I know we're speaking about networking, and it seems really controversial for me to say, like, just do what you can manage, right? So you can't speak to 100 people. It's just, you just don't have the social energy, the drive, like, oh my God, you can't, it's draining. You are giving so much. So you do need to be very intentional with the relationships that you build. You do need to be very focused with the types of people who you can speak to. And especially if you experience social anxiety, or you might only have 1 hour. You can go to the networking event, but you can't stay for the full hour. You might only be able to stay for 30 minutes. So you've got to be really intentional. And one of the ways that you can be intentional about this is by doing the prep work. So normally if I'm going to a conference, I'm going to look up who the speakers are. I'm going to connect with them on LinkedIn. And yes, LinkedIn, yep. I've seen in the chat, lots of people said it's a numbers thing. And yes, it is. But if you're going to be really intentional about building those relationships, remember I said earlier that the currency of relationships, the currency of business is relationships. Be interested. You could say, look, Sonia, I know you're going to be speaking at particular event. I'm going to have to rush off, but maybe we can, jump online for a 15-minute introductory or discovery call, for example. So you really do need to be intentional about the people who you're reaching out to, the conversations that you're having, and how you can then translate that to where you are and the value exchange that might be able to take place. Now,
I think that's superb.
yeah,
Absolutely
can I
superb.
weigh in on Joanna's question?
Please.
And I speak from a perspective. I mean, I have adult children now. They're 25 and 26 and 28. Don't tell them I forgot their age. 26 and 28. But I remember when my children were much younger, at primary school age, I was really quite intentional about the way how I spent or the way how I invested my time. And so I having a support network was really, really important to me. And to your question, Joanna, I think having a support network is really, really important for building a business. You said that you've got young children and there might be challenges that you are experiencing just in life. So having a support network is key to help you make those next steps, because sometimes there are things that are glaringly obvious, but you just can't see it. You are just too close. And everybody was kind of speaking about books that they have written. I too have just written a book. It's called Strategic Planning. And the reason I wrote the strategic planning workbook was because I was asking my mentees to create a 5-year plan. And for all of you on the line, I'd like you just to do this in your own time. If you write down the age that you are now, and then write down where do you want to be, and then write down how old you will be in 5 years' time, simple maths, and then almost reverse engineer the process. What do you want to have achieved over the next 5 years? Make that goal so big, so bold, so loud that it absolutely petrifies you, that it forces you to go back to your phone book and have a look at who are those people who are doing the very thing that I want to do in the next 5 years, and start to reverse engineer the process. By default, you will know who you should be speaking to. By default, you'll know the networking events that you need to go to, the types of relationships that you need to build. Oh, I need to speak to this person, but not right now, because if I speak to them now, it's going to be premature, and I'm not ready for that level of a conversation. So I think to your point, Joanna, kind of putting a plan in place. And I found when my children were much younger, creating a strategic plan that involved myself, my husband, some other members of my family, especially my mum, who was quite helpful with childcare at the time, but involving those people so that you can see quite clearly what that roadmap will look like for you. And for everybody, it's going to be different, right? Everybody doesn't have maybe a mum who can help with childcare, but you're going to find other alternatives that will help you in that particular space.
Thank you so much. Good. Just before we go to the next question, I'm just going to make a suggestion to everyone. So I get asked a lot, oh, Russell, I would use LinkedIn, but I can't think what to write. So if you're watching this recording, why not write down what your takeaways are from it, share those comments on LinkedIn with a good picture of the Open University, and then tag us. That's a brilliant thing to do. And each of you take away something different as well and unique from your own life experience. So I hope that helps. Robert, do you have another question for us?
Yes. So we have a couple of things in the chat. Lola has asked about any tips for overcoming imposter syndrome. And then I love this question from Sarah. When starting a business and networking, how do you balance protecting your innovative idea with the need to share it broadly enough to get feedback and insights from people you don't yet know well? So we can maybe cover those two questions and then hear from Sundus, who has their hand up.
Who would like to handle that second question? I think is a really interesting one about trying to protect your unique idea. So I get people contacting me saying, hey, Russell, I've got a brilliant business idea. I'd love to tell you about it. But first you have to sign my non-disclosure agreement. So I say, well, that's okay. I'm not going to sign that. That's ended the conversation. And it's all about trust. If you give yourself time to get to know someone, you will know what is safe to tell them and what is safe not to tell them. And there's a great saying that I heard recently, which is business is done at the speed of trust. So don't build networks, build relationships, spend time building that trust. Who would like to come in about the one about imposter syndrome and how to address it?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in, but I'd also love to hear Claudine's thoughts. I just want to kind of answer a few questions all in one space. For the individuals who asked about redundancy, I have been let go twice in 2 years. And so there's a TED Talk on that. But mostly, I guess my point being is, my cousin asked me the other day, she's thinking of leaving her full-time job to start a business. And we've mentioned it a few times on this call. It's about knowing what you want to achieve. Russell mentioned it's not about getting rich quick, getting rich quick. So as an example, when I started in 2020, one of the first things that I bought was a Microsoft Surface because it was a tab. And that was the first £1,000 that I spent. I spent a couple of £100 on a website, and that's not even me. I actually asked somebody to gift me my website domain. And then I hustled and I skill swapped. And in today's generation, everyone's trying to get paid quick. And controversially, I'm going to say skill swapping is a really good way of building out your network and also understanding what you're good at and where you need to outsource. A great example being, I'm not a great project manager, but I had a best friend who was actually going through her own redundancy, wanting to get into product management. So I said, look, I will help you with visibility and I will help you with interview skills and making your presentations if you can help me with this lack of tasks that I'm doing. So that was really, really helpful. The second thing was that I spoke quite honestly and transparently to my loved ones and said, my lifestyle is going to change. I'm going to go from a consultant salary to about 12.5K a year, because that's what's tax efficient in the UK. That's about £1,000 a month. That means that I can't be going out and ordering Uber or going to Deliveroo or going to the cinema or be doing all the fun things that you think are fun. I need to stay in. But that means that we can coordinate our times differently. A few things I did wrong in the beginning was I hustled so much that I thought, you know what, this brain, when my brain starts hurting, it must be like I'm going to the gym and I've worked out really well. So I just kept on going, not knowing that like when your brain is on fire, it's not a great sign. So taking breaks is really important. Taking 3 days offline, science tells you actually helps to rewire your brain, is great for digital detoxing. And being bored is key when you're in business. You can get creative. When it came to building trust, I did a lot of things wrong before I did them right. I'm going to be really honest. I think I've only now really started being relevant. My claim to fame is I'm really good at failing really quickly. And so I know that about myself. And so I will try and kind of, what's the word, like, knock those dominoes down before somebody else does. I used to go and tell everybody my business idea. And actually, now in hindsight, what you can do differently is you can tell them the problem that you're trying to solve and see if they relate to the problem and say, okay, so what are some of the solutions you're using? What are some of the gaps that you see? How can we make this better? So there's a strategic way of doing it, right? In the beginning, I would not just tell everybody my idea, but what I learned from the exercises, I would then ask questions like, well, what did you take away from this idea? What do you think I'm building? What do you think I'm creating? And they'd relay it back to me and I'd realize, you know what, I'm not even saying what I'm trying to build properly because it's all in my head. So it's one thing to have it all in your head and it's stuck up there, but actually you don't know what you don't know until you start bringing someone back. And the idea around like imposter syndrome and confidence, that isn't something that's going to go away 100%. But there are moments now where I don't feel like an imposter. And I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm on this panel. I don't feel like an imposter. Not even zero, not even a little bit. Because I have the credit, the portfolio, the CV, the evidence to be here. If you said to me, and I made this joke a couple of months ago, I was like, Sonia, if you want to host Glastonbury, we'd love you. I would feel like an imposter because I don't really know anything about music and I don't know anything about the arts. I'm just a good hype person. Absolutely. You know what I mean? But we're talking about a topic which is networking and building relationships and being visible. That is my bread and butter. So think about what I kind of tend to say is like your 5 hashtags or your 5 umbrella terms that make you you. and think about researching them and knowing what's happening and being a part of the trends. And so if any conversation or topic comes outside of that, unless it's something you're trying to get into, like I'm trying to get into fashion now, I show up as a listener versus a mentor, you can say things like, that's a great conversation, that's a great topic, I don't have enough information about it, I'm just going to listen and learn. But when you do have something, you have to be brave enough to share, but you have to be brave enough to share with the point of adding value and increasing somebody else's knowledge. It's not about asking for favors. It's about, did you see this article? This is the stat I'm telling you. This is something that's super cool, right? Even on this call, you might have heard that I've referenced a few areas. That's because I know what I'm talking about. But if you said, Claudine's got a great hat, you know what I mean? If she was like, Sonia, what's your opinion on a hat? I'd be like, I think it's super cool, but I don't have any more opinion than that because it's not my forte. So as much as business is about stepping into your discomfort, more importantly, it's about knowing which space isn't yours to take and stepping out. And that's what people get wrong when they're trying to be visible, or they're trying to be famous, or they're trying to connect with followers. And Claudine raised a great point earlier. It was be intentional, but be intentional with your time. And my final point I'll say before I stop is 5 years in, I now have pro bono hours. And for anyone trying to set boundaries, I do have pro bono hours, and I will do free work, free, whatever that means to everyone, I will do it. And I'm quite, clear about that, transparent, but I limit that to like 8 hours a month. And I tally that. So 8 hours can go to a school or a charity or a public group, or it might be for a company who actually is making a lot of money, but isn't trying to pay me anything. And in return, I'm happy to do this for you if it's not paid, but can you test out my product? Can you go from my pilot? Can you give me feedback? Can you introduce me somewhere? Can you give me a testimonial? And those like word of mouth references, introductions, or pieces of feedback in loop have helped me get into another door. And so I think if it's about protecting your time, it's about setting boundaries, being really clear with how much you're willing to give versus what you want to kind of, take back, but also being really truthful to your loved ones, yourself included, to say, my lifestyle is going to change and I have to be okay with that. But it's going to be for X amount of time. And if that X amount of time goal isn't being hit, what is the alternative? So every year I'm like, if I don't make 12.5K this year, I have to go back to full-time work. And that's it. And I promise you, that is as much as I think. And you have ebbs and flows, but you're like, that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm just trying to survive on your own merit.
Brilliant summary, Sonia. Thank you for that. And I know we're just coming to the end. So Claudine, is there any final points you'd like to make?
Maybe just to pick up on the imposter syndrome piece, because I think Sonia done a really great summary. But in my office, I used to have let's call it a window ledge of fame. It's where I'd put all my certificates, all my trophies. And anytime I got a little bit wobbly, I thought, oh my gosh, I really can't do this, or this one's a little bit bigger than me. I would have this sign in this kind of saying in my head that just literally said, look to the left. And look to the left was the window ledge where all those trophies are. Those trophies represent somebody else's thoughts about me. And I've come from an environment where I've got to think as well as myself as other people do. So I would encourage myself by looking at my last success. So for those who are struggling with imposter syndrome or low confidence, I'd encourage you to list your strengths. And if you can't find what those strengths are, ask somebody else, ask a colleague, ask a relative, ask a family member, ask them what are those good or outstanding qualities about you do they see? And focus on those outstanding qualities and building from there, rather than focusing on the negative or the low confidence or the imposter syndrome. Because what I've learned over time is that as you become more competent, you will grow your competence. As you grow your competence, you will grow your courage, you will grow your confidence in the thing that you are doing. It's not something that happens overnight. You can't just flip the light switch and I'm going to press this button and I'm going to get confident, or if I win this deal, I'm going to, imposter syndrome is going to disappear. You've got to kind of grow into this thing, but be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. And in the same way that you would be compassionate with a friend, be compassionate with yourself. Each person, you can only manage what you can manage. And as I'm looking at the chat, I'm seeing there are all different types of people in this space. There are mothers with children. There are people who've been made redundant. We're all navigating the highs and lows of life. And so it's not like you've got this business idea and this is the only thing that you're going to focus on for 18 hours of a day. You've still got other competing priorities. So you've got to be able to give yourself some grace to lean into the thing that you are trying to build, but then at the same time, just being kind to yourself.
Wonderful. I love just being kind. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Claudine, for these amazing insights you've shared with everyone. And there's one thing I'd like to add about imposter syndrome. So I've just recently been given a new title, and I'm faking it until I make it. So my new title is grandfather. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. That was brilliant.
Thank you now.
Yeah, we'll have recordings of the previous two on the OBC site. And this as well.
Thank you all.
Thanks.